Okay, we are live. Thank you so much for joining us today for this Accounting Alchemy Network Lyceum. My name is Ingrid Edstrom, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Accounting Alchemy Network. One of my co-founders who usually hosts Lyceums with me is actually being interviewed on another podcast today. So I get Fran and Peter all to myself. And before we dive into our Spotlight Lyceum, just a quickie reminder of what the Accounting Alchemy Network is here to do. We are a grassroots movement within the accounting profession, working to turn the accounting profession into a vehicle for positive change in our world. And we love doing what we're calling Spotlight Lyceums with accounting professionals who are already doing that. And so I'm very excited to get to have this conversation with Fran and Peter Ellington today from Triple Bottom Line Accounting in the UK. And with that, I would love to just toss it over to the two of you for a moment, because we've got a lot to cover. You guys are doing some amazing, amazing things. First off, since most of our members currently are in the United States, can you tell us a little bit about where specifically in the world you are calling in from today?
Okay, well, I'll start off. Peter and I run a business that is based in Norwich, and Peter's still in the office this evening at 6 o'clock in the evening in the UK at the moment. I've managed to grab a bus home. So I'm in North Norfolk, and Norwich is in Norfolk, which is in the east of England. Summer arrived this weekend, so we went from wearing hats and scarves and gloves and big coats to saying it's too hot now. So that's where we are. We're based in the east of England, about a 2-hour train ride northeast from London.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Amsterdam is closer, but the sea's in the way.
And Peter's sitting in the most environmental building in the whole of the UK, possibly the whole of Europe.
Wow.
It's an enterprise centre. We've got an office in there. It's a straw bale building. It's got a BREEAM outstanding certification, and it's built to Passive House standards. That's the foyer there. It's used by UEA, University of East Anglia students as well. It's a nice big airy foyer and lecture theatre and lots of seminar rooms and offices. So it's very much a carbon neutral building, very energy efficient. Those blinds you see will go up and down depending on the temperature. The windows and the positioning and sheltering of the windows means that it stays cool in the summer but retains the warmth in the winter. And there's no actual heating in the building. Bodies are used to heat the building and get circulated. So when we're on our own at Christmas and all the students have gone home, we have to sneak a heater in.
That is brilliant. It's a beautiful location, and it's so fun to see how comfortable and visually pleasing environmentally friendly buildings can be. That is so wonderful. So I guess with that, I would love to hear some of the history and background behind Triple Bottom Line Accounting. Where did the idea come from, and how did you get started with this? Peter, do you want to maybe take that question?
Okay, yeah. So I was in FTSE 100 companies, large companies. I was working for insurance, and then in telecommunications, selling call centers. I was qualified accountant, commercial director. And in 2008, I left and went to university to do an economics degree. And I was focusing on behavioral economics and environmental economics, a 2-year degree at the University of East Anglia. And my major question was, if the world's burning, why aren't we doing more about it? You know, that was my major question. And 2 years later, I wasn't any the wiser. I knew a little bit more about economics and behavioral and game theory and behavior, and kind of realized that teaching accounting was more of interest to me. I had taught earlier in my career in my 30s, and I realized that I could have more impact by teaching accounting. And I actually decided, rather than economics being the major contributor to climate change which I think it is. I think capitalism is, kind of the issue, and no limits to growth is obviously an issue. And doing the economics degree, and we had a great economics teacher talking us about showing us about the tragedy of the commons and the economic effects, and of course that that economics is grounded on the basis that we don't worry about anything that's not human, and we don't worry about humans that aren't alive today. And so that's the grounding of economics from the was it Belbin, that is the right term, the guy in UCL in London who's kept in vinegar in one of the halls I walked past.
No, you're talking. His name will come to me in a minute.
Yeah, he's
philosopher, precursor of utilitarianism. Bentham, James.
Bentham,
James,
Bentham. He did, because I did a doctorate in education at the Institute of Education, and he's stuffed in a little glass cage when being preserved forever. Bentham, yeah. So, but the groundworks of that was, we only worry about humans today, and we only worry about humans. We don't worry about future generations and so on. And you kind of like start realizing that the whole system is not very good. But then, of course, I sort of started teaching accounting and really enjoying teaching accounting. But whilst all this was going on, I'd already formed Triple Bottom Line Accounting as a little consultancy company. Because I worked in telecommunications, a lot of my colleagues were going off becoming consultants and that kind of thing, kind of like, Peter, we're missing you, could you be our accountant? So I had a few sort of clients on the side. Anyway, that fast forward to today, and I'm teaching in the university. I'm only 20% now. I teach on the MBA program, but I probably do more teaching for sustainability. We've been running CPD packages, even for a platform called MyCPE, which is American. We've done free sessions for them, but we've done sessions for the association that I'm a council member of, which is the Association of International Accountants. And Triple Bottom Line Accounting employs 13 people. Since the pandemic, before pandemic, we're turning over £200,000, what kind of like 300,000 in dollars. We're now turning over 650 in pounds, which is getting up for $1 million. And it's all the growth, 3 times, triple bottom line, tripled in 3 years. And so why and how are we a sustainable accountancy practice? So we're a sustainable accountancy practice in 3 ways. Okay. The first one is that we attract a lot of companies and people that are into sustainability, climate change, and social change. So we've got a niche in regenerative agriculture. We've got about 20 to 25 farms, I can't the last count, and they're really leading the way in regenerative agriculture. Some of the leading spokespeople in the UK are our clients in that area. We've got energy consultants, ecologists, and we've got a lot of small charities and community interest companies that are about, changing the way that society acts, because the ESG, government's bit, B Corps, and how you regulate yourself, how you put the rules in place about how you look at society and the environment, are important. And, so we've got people in that E and in the S areas. Okay. That's one area. And the next area where we're a sustainable accountancy practice is that Fran has been running net zero consultancy. And Fran has done about 30 consultants. We had a contract with a local authority where they were referring batches of their businesses to us. Fran would be speaking to 5-10 companies at a time. And out of those sessions, 1 or 2 would ask for us to do a carbon assessment and put in a net zero plan for them. And Fran did a number of those, paid for by that local community, that local council, about 30. And now we've launched that as a product offering. And more recently, we've written a guide to accountants on how they can do a net zero assessment, along with a complete analysis of all of the, or most of the organizations that you can use to plug into accounting software. So Sage Earth will plug into QuickBooks. We've got a company called Ecology that will plug into Xero accounting software. Xero is it's an Australian software that's got a big foothold in the UK as well. And other companies like Normative, Greenly. In the US, there's a company called Carbon Hound. These plug into accounting softwares and do an accounting assessment. And we've shown accountants how they can use that to get into this space. It's quite an interesting challenge, though. What we've found, so we've done this whole analysis and comprehensive table, and there are people starting to do that as a product for their clients, but not many. We're really ahead of the game in doing it for our clients. And then the third area, so there's two areas where we're a sustainable accountant. First one was at the type of clients we have. Second is that Fran's doing all these net zero assessments. We're training our management accountant, because we're accounting and tax primarily, but we do management accounting and advisory work. We got an advisory accountant, and he's off doing his training, sustainability training, because the UK accountancy bodies have got sustainability training packages where they do the SDGs, and they go through net zero, and they go through other challenges on sustainability, biodiversity, water, human rights, and so on, all the ESG issues. So those are the two areas that, just repeating again, clients, net zero. And the third area is basically giving advisory, general advisory. Fran advised a company, a removals company, the house removals, on waste management, how he could get a waste management certificate and be very sustainable about how he's disposing of his waste and so on. So those are the three areas we're working on. It's interesting because I've kind of got this role as a bit of a public role that Fran's now sharing with me, because she's co-authored the last article. But we have a blogging site in the UK called Accounting Web, and it's the most read website in the UK. They have an annual event, Accounting Web Live. I did a pitch off against three other people, and it was the best. You were pitching the best advisory service for accountants, and I pitched sustainability, those things I just mentioned, and I won. I won the pitch off, right, in a kind of national event. And as a consequence of that, they asked me to be the judge for the Accounting Excellence Awards in the Pride Award for ESG. Now, the really great thing about being the judge for the ESG Pride Awards, right, is that I get to see all the other entrants, right, and I can see what they're doing. So I've been wrestling with these 11 entries that I've got, and I kind of, it's quite surprising, because I kind of had written through a few people that I knew were in this space. Because we're not competing with them, we're collaborating with them, but it's really useful to see what they're doing. And the first area of judging, I've got 11 to judge. The first area of judging is whether they've actually done the governance side. And so I've got 5 B Corps entrants, and Fran's just done our B Corp. So I'd be eliminating us now, because we haven't got B Corp. So I'd eliminate us at that point. But the B Corps process is really quite onerous. I mean, I think Fran probably.
Yeah, it's very rigorous, and I don't know if anybody listening has looked into B Corps or even achieved a B Corps accreditation. But you can't cheat, you can't lie, because it's really, really checked, and you have to provide all the proof. So we applied in January. We probably won't get ours until the end of this year, because I'm still on the waiting list to get everything checked and verified. And then they'll ask for more evidence. So if any of those companies that Peter is judging have B Corps, and they go up the list, because we know someone else has already verified what they've done and what they are currently doing. The key is that B Corps only lasts for 3 years, and to get it again, you have to have a higher score. You have to have done more than what you had done 3 years ago. So if their B Corps is 3 years old, we might question it. But yeah.
That's brilliant.
I would just say, winding it back to the beginning, I'm sure as the audience are accountants, that just a little bit about why we chose triple bottom line accounting as our name.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question, so I'm glad you looped back to that.
Yeah, okay, so it's an interesting story. We thought it was only about 15 years old, but it's a little bit older than that, the term triple bottom line. But it's about accounting, the idea, the concept of accounting for people, planet, and prosperity. So rather than having that bottom line that is just purely how much profit have you made, it's how much impact you've made on people and planet as well. And up until recently, there's been no formula as to how to do that. And with things like SASB and the ISSB, so International Standards for Sustainability Reporting, and the TCFD, the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, it's becoming a little bit clearer as to how we can actually report on people, planet, and prosperity. And B Corps is just one way that you can do that. There are many other bodies like that. So triple bottom line came from this concept that was coined by John Elkington. So not Ellington, but Elkington, who's written several books, the most recent being Green Swans, which we could talk about during this session if there's time. And he's still working hard for this idea of, mitigating climate change and helping accountants to do that. But he actually recently did a product recall on the triple bottom line, and he's rebranded it as responsibility, resilience, and regeneration. It's not that he says that the idea of people, planet, and prosperity is wrong, but we need to move on. We need to take responsibility. We're constantly telling our team we need to be resilient as a business. When we talk about have we made any profit, it's not because we want to take dividends and cream it all off and drive fast cars and live in big mansions. It's because we want to be resilient as a business so we can keep moving on with our message about sustainability, about how accountants can count carbon as well as count cash. So
Yes.
and actually the less carbon, the more cash you save. So the message that we're getting across. And regeneration, we've seen this movement for regenerative agriculture, regenerative economy. So regenerating and thinking about, as Pete mentioned earlier, that traditional economics doesn't think about future generations. What we call a sustainable world is one where we take what we need and leave enough for the rest of nature and future generations to thrive, to live well. And at the moment, of course, we're actually using up those finite resources. And any of us that have children and grandchildren should be worrying about their futures and trying to do what we can now, to restore that. So the responsibility, resilience, and regeneration is an idea that we really love. So people, planet, prosperity is the origins of triple bottom line accounting, and moving on to that sort of idea of regenerative economy.
Our three words,
Thank you.
our three words are caring, progressive, and professional, or professional, caring, and progressive. I forget which order.
It's caring, professional, and progressive.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting because I remember speaking to one of the kind of senior people at the university, and I said, we've come up with our three words, our triple bottom line, and it's caring, professional, and progressive. And oh, I like professional, I like progressive. It didn't just work and ignored the caring bit, And it's kind of like, okay, yeah, kind of, you're really old hat economist, aren't you? Because caring's the most important thing. One of the reasons our problems of the world is that, it's a truck that's going along and we're all in the back, and somebody falls out and we don't stop the truck. We just look at the person that's fallen out and think, well, they just fell out. Hard luck, And we need a world where we stop the truck and we go and get them back on and we dust them off and put them back on the truck. We can't just drive the truck down the road, consuming what we like without worrying about. And if
Yeah.
we just had that caring philosophy, it's kind of like, it would just change everything. So caring, progressive, professional, you've got to be professional, you know, got to be progressive, because if you can be progressive and adopt new ways of working, you can then have more money to care.
I'm curious what professional means to you, because there's a lot of different connotations of what is considered professional.
Yeah, okay, professional. Well, it's doing what you'd expect from a professional. Okay, so doing the accounts right,
Yeah.
doing the tax return, working within the current world, working within the current paradigm. You know, I don't think that sitting on the side of an airplane and saying, I'm not going to get off until you do something about climate change. I don't actually think, I think it's required that people do that, but I don't think it's professional. You might say it's caring and it's progressive, but it's definitely not professional. It's not how you go about things. Okay. And that's the difference. You know, when I'm judging these awards, we got one guy and he's really out there saying the world needs to completely change. We need to stop consumption. But the world is accelerating and consuming. And I do agree with him that consumption and growth has got to stop. You don't just pull a lever or a couple of levers and the whole thing just stops. Because it's the world and society is like a tanker. And it doesn't just stop. It carries on consuming. It carries on flying. It carries on doing what it does. And it's a really difficult thing to get it to change direction and slow up and even reverse. So that sitting on the side saying it's all wrong and the world's got to change, and it just alienates people and pushes them away from you. And so we are really strong believers that the world is in a real bad state and that accountants have a real big role to play. But telling them they're all idiots because they don't see that they can do net zero is just going to get them to alienate you and push you to one side. So we're saying less carbon equals less cost equals more customers.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, and I love the way that this is why we decided to do a spotlight with you, because you're doing so many amazing things with your business and practicing what you preach, leading by example. And I love how you started with talking about the clients that you serve and how that huge and yet simple choice to work with companies that resonate with your values is one of the biggest, most important steps. And so many conferences are teaching about how the riches are in the niches, how we need to specialize in particular focus areas.
No.
And well, to a certain extent, though, specializing in our values, specializing in people with whom you resonate. And it's not just an industry specialization of, learning the technology or learning the workflows for a particular industry. It's how do we attract to us the people that we want to invest our time with? And I love how you are exemplifying that from a values perspective so clearly, because the way that riches are in the niches is from a marketing standpoint, being able to attract to us the clients who are going to resonate with us too. And by being an accounting firm that focuses on regeneration and climate change, you are attracting to you the customers who are going to resonate with your message and want to support you, and it creates a rising tide that raises all ships. So yeah, I'm curious. I think
that, carry on.
I'm curious for the accountants watching this interview, if someone wants to begin with getting more clients attracted to them based on their values, where might they start doing that? Where was the inspiration for you to have that be your focus? And how did you begin to really focus on a niche? What was your process for that?
I think it's interesting because we've got a lot of very traditional clients who probably this is not on their radar at all. When in the early days, we were probably the cheapest option they had in the locality. Then we started to get niches in different parts of the world, and regenerative agriculture, organic farming, they have a network, well, lots of different networks. They all talk to each other. So then there was a load of people to the west of England that started to say, "Oh, can we be your clients?" And then some in the southwest as well, and then up north in Scotland. So it sort of builds itself. But we also believe that we don't want to be necessarily that niche, because it's our more traditional clients that don't have this on their radar, that we want to actually impact and make a difference. And so explaining to them how they can start doing their carbon accounting, and how they can start thinking about actually decarbonising if they're still using fossil fuels in any part of their business, whether that's fueling vehicles or heating their premises or their hot water, for instance. Or whether it's actually looking at scope 3 emissions. I don't know whether the audience here understands that separation of scope 1, scope 2 or scope 3 emissions, but when you do carbon accounting, you have to actually account for your spend, your expenditure, your supply chain emissions. So for instance, if you, I get this thrown at me all the time in the UK. The UK apparently is only responsible for 2% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So why are we bothering? You know, why are we bothering is the question. You know, what difference can we make? And I say, well,
so much difference. Everyone needs to bother. That's the point.
Yeah. I say, you know, I'm trying to find my phone. I can't find it. Where did you buy? Where did we buy all the company phones? Where did we buy the tablets? Where did we buy? Where did our Apple Macs and our computers come from? They've probably come from China or India or Africa or something like that. Not only was carbon used in creating those products, but then they had to be expensively shipped. Expensively, when I say expensive, I'm talking about the amount of emissions to air freight or sea freight goods to the UK. Yeah, and we have to include those in our carbon accounting. So this is really important, because this is where I'm seeing we can make when I say we, businesses generally and accountants, can make a difference, because we're putting pressure on our supply chain and saying, actually, I want to buy my my computer, my IT, etc., from a sustainable business. Then, you know, it's going to push the others to be sustainable too, because they're going to lose customers. And we can see that happening with the various carbon trackers that bookkeeping software integrates with now. I can talk about some in the UK and some I know of that are available in the US.
Can I just talk about scope 3 before you do?
Well, just to finish, is that they're building up these databases. And then, yes, of course, husband and wife, you know, databases of suppliers. And we start to get more and more information as the months go by as to, can we put pressure on our supplier to change, which is the best thing to do, rather than taking our business away from them. Or if they refuse to change, then yes, let's go and buy that good or that product or that service from somewhere else. So, yeah.
So just so quickly, just to interrupt, because just to break up, because this was a great story, because we put this article out in Accounting Web about a net zero and everything, and the whole, all of these people pile in saying, do you like, you know, this Ellington talking about religion again, you know, kind of like carbon change is a religion, you know? Okay, so preaching, and anyway, somebody
system, I think, yeah.
It's a belief system. Somebody said, well, we don't have to do anything about this because it's all the emissions are in China. And then somebody else stepped in. At last, somebody else stepping into my defense and said, hang on, this is like you're walking your dog and your dog does an awful dump on the sidewalk, right? And you don't pick it up because there's a Chinese guy just over the road with an even bigger dog whose dog has had a bigger dump. Okay. Now, I spoke to Maddie Harland, who's the director of permaculture in the UK, who's been a client for 12 years. And I told her this story and she said, I said, and that guy across the road whose dog has had a dump, and you're not going to pick up the poo off the sidewalk because of what the Chinese guy's done. He's only recently started started letting the shit go out into the toilet system, because up until only a few years ago, that poo was going into compost loos anyway. Okay. I just think that's just a great story. I.e., you know, you're saying we're not going to clean up our mess because the mess is bigger somewhere else. And also, you know, but the people who now are creating the mess that is contributing to the problem, for years, they've, you know, their mess has been sorted out. It's only because they're trying to adopt our values that they're making a mess now. Anyway, back to you, Fran. So
well, I would love to just add in really quick. It's a fantastic analogy. And I think it illustrates even more how everything is connected. Because even beyond that, if you did pick up your dog's poop off the sidewalk, most people are picking up their dog's poop with an uncompostable plastic bag and then throwing it in a landfill and not even thinking about the implications that that has, that throwing it away, there is no such place as a way.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the things that we buy, particularly in our businesses, if we're only focusing on a single bottom line, and that single bottom line is profit, personal profit to accumulate wealth, like you were saying earlier, Peter, in a capitalist economy where it's a zero-sum game, where in order to win, someone else has to lose. And the profits of some are built off the debts of others, and we are creating poverty for others. With every purchase we make, we need to be asking ourselves, who's actually paying for this? Because the price of the products that we purchase are set based on marketing in a capitalist machine. But if that price is being driven lower to increase buying power, someone else is paying for that, whether that be sweatshop laborers or extractive industries of our planet. Someone else is paying. So who pays? Then the next question is, who decides? Who's making these decisions about who's paying and how these things are happening? And who can choose to do something about it? So looking at the entire equation of who's paying, who's deciding, and what we can change in those factors, it reminds me, when you're talking about the carbon accounting, Fran, of my friend Will from the Pachamama Alliance posted this brilliant meme that he created on Facebook. It wasn't even a meme, it was just a photograph that he took of a little fruit cup, just a normal little cup of fruit. It was pears, I think. And on this tiny little fruit cup, this little plastic packaging with foil wrapper on top, it said something along the lines of grown in Ecuador, packaged in Taiwan. And here, this friend of mine is in California. And he posted a picture of a map showing a line going from Ecuador to Taiwan and then back to California. When we grow pears in California, why on earth would we be purchasing Ecuadorian pears that were packaged in Taiwan and having to ship this fruit multiple times all over the world to eat half a pear in plastic packaging?
Yes, it's nuts, isn't it?
Insanity that we're doing this. And that tiny little cup that is costing our planet and probably Taiwanese sweatshop laborers probably cost less than $1.
Yeah, less than buying a proper nice organic pear fresh from your locality. That's the trouble, you know. Like, I think sustainable food, sustainably grown food is very sadly more expensive, and so it's a middle class luxury. And that's really, really sad. And you know, we have local growers that are, you know, they can barely make a living. If they put their costs up any higher, then it's going to squeeze everybody up, particularly in a climate of rising, you know, inflation and rising cost of living. You know, I took it's an hour's bus journey into Norwich, the city where we work from where we live. And people were getting on the bus from one of the cheaper supermarkets that the bus stopped outside, and you could see what they were buying. They were incredibly unhealthy people, and you know, their shopping bags were full. I'm very judgmental of food that was not going to make them, was just going to exacerbate their poor health. And I just felt so sad, because I thought, what is it? Is it poor education? What is it? Or is it just that this food is just so cheap and affordable, and they think it's filling them up? It makes them, you know, feel full. That you know, that it's just purely poverty that is causing that. And I just think it's so sad, because if we kept our food local and we ate seasonally and locally, we wouldn't in the UK be eating bananas and oranges, but we have got our own indigenous fruit and vegetables that's equally as healthy, and it would be accessible and affordable to all. So it's a very sad state of affairs, I think. But that's a classic example of something that you can grow there that's grown somewhere else, shipped somewhere else, and then shipped back again. Why? Yeah, and wrapped in plastic.
Yeah. So I love that you're doing the carbon accounting. And I guess my next question for you, Fran, is how can other accounting professionals start to learn how to do some of this and turn it into a revenue stream for their firm? How can we create a rising tide that raises all ships and make it effective and sustainable to be able to offer services where we are accounting for more than just personal profit?
Yeah, I've put the link to the article that we've written, which does that. It tells everybody how to start, what to do in the chat. But just in case people are watching this and don't have access to the chat, I will just quickly pop on the shared screen. I think I'm sharing not that slide, but if I go to just the end here, bear with me a moment, there's a little bit of a delay. We've written 2 articles and I didn't have time to find the first article, but it's in International Accountant. And this article here, in fact, if you just Googled International Accountant, the issue would come up and you can flick through the pages and you can find us on page 18, I think it is. It's a 5-page article which is designed specifically for accountants to find out how they start. If I just swap to this screen, so if I just, what are you seeing now? Are you seeing the
19.3?
Yeah, 19.3. In the what is happening is around the world, software developers and startups are designing bolt-ons to bookkeeping software. So perhaps the most famous software, bookkeeping software, Xero and QuickBooks, that I know are used in the US as well as the UK. And there are various bolt-ons where you can start calculating your greenhouse gases. But I'm showing you this because the normative calculator is free, and this is our dashboard from last year ending 31st of December 2022. And it's free. It's an international website. It's called the SME Climate Hub. So again, if you just Google the SME Climate Hub, it's UN approved. I think it's part of, it's a UN initiative actually. And it's got loads of resources on how you can do this for yourself. It's interesting that you have to upload what's called activity-based emissions. So basically you'll put in how many kilowatts of energy you've used, electricity or from gas or from other sources. You'll put in how many litres of fuel, gallons of fuel that you've used in your company vehicles, for instance. And you'll put in how big your offices are and the commutes of your employees, or whether they're working from home, for instance. And then the rest is really taken from your profit and loss account, combined with your, a download of your bookkeeping into different categories. And each category of expenditure, so it might be a breakdown of various capital goods, it might be a breakdown of various services you're buying, it might be legal services, it might be internet, cloud-based storage, email, all has a carbon footprint. It might be other sorts of sundries, etc., business travel and so on. And there are conversion factors that have been created by the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, another worldwide and very well-respected organisation. and the SBTI, which is the Science-Based Targets Initiative, again, a part that partners with the United Nations Global Compact, with the Worldwide Fund for Nature, and other big bodies like that. They've created these conversion factors that are sector specific, industry specific, nationally specific, etc. And so it will say that if you spent X amount of money on computer hardware, for instance, there is an estimation of how many emissions is involved in that in that purchase. They are all estimations. So what I'm saying to accountants is this is an absolute gift, because most people running their own businesses don't really understand their bookkeeping. They don't know how to create the categories. And what might take them, one of my clients said, I'm going to do it myself. And he created all these macros on a spreadsheet, and he was just into it. And it took him about 5 hours. Yeah. Whereas our team, I'll take one of our bookkeepers or one of our junior accountants, and they can do it in an hour because they understand the numbers. They can upload it into the calculator, which is online. And they will get, if you look at the little wheel here, a breakdown of their scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. And you can see that we've got no scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, just simply by virtue of where our office is based. And that it's, you know, as I say, incredibly environmental building. But if that building was buying its electricity from a provider that was using electricity that had come from coal or gas fired power stations, then we would have a scope 2 carbon footprint, because indirect emissions in scope 2 is mainly electricity. So what we've got to do, we've created a sustainable purchasing policy, and this is where the advisory comes in. What can you do to decarbonise? Is that sort of budgeting to change your gas boiler in 2 years' time with a heat pump, for instance? Is that looking at your delivery vans and deciding as they come up for a renewal that you will buy an EV van rather than another diesel van? How can you afford that? What savings will you make by doing that, by having that cost now? How much, you know, what's the savings long term? And of course, as Pete said, less carbon, less cost, more customers. And then the tricky thing is your supply chain emissions. So if we all consume less as individuals, as households, as businesses, we will have less of a carbon footprint just by simply consuming less. So only buying what you need, buying locally where you can, buying responsibly where you can. So I know in the US there's a company called Carbon Hound. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Name sounds familiar. Yeah, I've heard of it, but I don't know a whole lot about it.
No, I've talked to the guy who created that, and it's an incredible product which that even integrates with Google Maps so that you can map your employee commutes, for instance. And it integrates, this is something that I haven't found in the UK, it will integrate with your utility bills, most of the major utility providers. So it will actually see how many kilowatts of energy you're using and measure those. But it's incredibly expensive, you know. So some of this is free, this one I'm showing you here. We've got something called Ecology Zero, which is only UK based at the moment, unfortunately. But that's free to small businesses in the UK, 100 employees or less. So again, we can do this for free. And other models are charging like about £10 a month, but Carbon Hound is charging about $50 a month. Now, that's not going to be affordable for most small businesses. It is an incredible product. And I think that's a shame because, you know, it could go a long way. I'm not aware of any other ones in the UK. I know of Kogo, which is Australia and New Zealand, for instance, and they are branching out worldwide. And there are other ones that integrate with your bank accounts and things like that. So they're pulling the data out and giving you a carbon footprint. So what I'm saying to accountants, and it's explained a lot more clearly and backed up by a link to a table comparison of all the, I've done a comparison of all the different things that I'm aware of that integrate, that accountants can use. That's in the article. I'm saying to accountants, this is part of your job, because having got those numbers, like I can see we've got 19.3 tons of scope 3 emissions. Another company will have lots of scope 1. You know, I've got a leisure boat, a holiday boat hire company. 90% of all their emissions are scope 1 because of the diesel they use on their boats, and how they heat the warehouses in their marina, was where they repair and rebuild their boats. So it's about, well, what can you do now? You know, you can't suddenly convert all your boats to electric, yeah? But it was just doing things like buying a higher grade diesel, for instance, cost them a bit more money, less emissions and less pollution. And then gradually, bit by bit, they will be either replacing boats with electric ones or converting their boats to electric. So this is where the accountant comes in, and we do your measurement, and then we'll look at your budget and your cash flow, and we can do that advisory and say, you know, what can you do now? You won't change the world in a day. You need to create targets and say, if I want to be net zero by 2050, then I'm going to have to reduce these emissions by, let's say, 7% a year to get there.
When you started doing it, Fran, you worked with Alistair, didn't you? And what's his background? Because I mean, how long did it take you to, you know, because you knew about climate change, but you didn't really know the detail that you know now. I mean, you've got extensive knowledge now, and you can hold your own doing a net zero consultancy for a small SME. But how did you get going? I mean, Alistair was more experienced because he's in the built infrastructure doing this day in, day out. And so how did you didn't just get a straw and put it in his ear and suck the knowledge out of his brain?
No, I mean, Alistair didn't know about this side of the business, but what Alistair, I've been working with this guy who is has worked for energy providers in the past, EDF, French, energy provider. He's a decarbonisation expert, so he's really good on those scopes 1 and scope 2 emissions. And between the two of us, we did various courses, United Nations, it's the UNCC e-learning platform, which has specialist modules, again, for people in finance and accounting, you know, as well as a general understanding climate change and the science. And then what happened was a company approached us and said, we'd like to use, they found us on the Sustainable Business Network in the UK. And they said, we want to pilot our product. We've got this carbon tracker. And we want to pilot on service industries like yourselves. I said, great, this is just what I want. And they did this amazing calculation, and I saw that it was basically a download of our bookkeeping, and then they extrapolated the data from it. And then they lost their funding and they didn't exist anymore. So I was presenting to a tech conference in June 2021. And I said at the end, I just had to do a 10-minute presentation on what we mean by sustainable business. And I said, you're all technicians in the audience. I'm not a technician, you know, I don't understand technology. But I put it out there to you that there must be a way of creating an integration with bookkeeping so we can measure our spend-based emissions, right? Now, you know that if you've thought of something, then probably 10 other people at least have thought of that something as well. So it wasn't because I put that out there to a tech conference in the east of England. I'm not claiming any kudos here, but basically all of a sudden I started to see and hear, oh, okay, there are things out there. Started talking to the people. I beta tested the one. I don't know if I'm still sharing or not, by the way.
You are still sharing, yeah.
Okay, I'll stop sharing. I beta tested the normative one alongside a few other people. It wasn't very good. I gave them our feedback. And then gradually you start to hear that there are other things being developed. And I worked with them and beta tested theirs and gave them feedback from not from an accounting perspective, because I'm not actually an accountant, but from a service industry,
But I've looked at, because we taught on a net zero sustainable leaders course in Cambridge. And Fran put some case studies up, 3 different case studies. I forget which ones they were. One was a boats company, holiday boats company, and different things. But everybody, it was really, they've got not reasonably intelligent people. They're doing a level 7 apprenticeship in the UK, which is kind of like an executive management course, you know. And they all got the answers right, didn't they? Kind of how do you got the carbon and how do you decarbonize this business? And everybody pretty much got it. And then that was just in the classroom within half an hour. It's not, so for a small business, it's not that hard to work out how you reduce the carbon and how then as an accountant, you've got this, as accountants got the skills. It's just kind of like, if you've got a business that you hadn't seen before and look at their cost base, within a very short period of time, you're coming up with cost savings ideas.
Yeah.
And it's the same as carbon. It's just not.
It's common sense, but people don't know where to start, or they think they don't have the skills. And once you show them, I do lots of workshops and I put case studies up and I say, okay, if this was your business, what would you do?
So where do you do these workshops? Because I think that that's what a lot of accountants are looking for. And we're definitely going to be sharing the link to your article in the Accounting Alchemy Network. Are the workshops all UK based? Would they be applicable to accountants in the United States?
We give them privately. So,
Yeah, I do them for local authorities. I'm doing one for Norfolk County Council next week. So some of them are live in person, some of them are webinars. My CPE has a workshop that it wasn't really a workshop, it was educational, but I actually did put the case studies up. So I could, very easily put a typical workshop out there online.
Fantastic. Yes.
Fran's my CPE stuff. I mean, I got a license for my CPE and it was £150. So it's $200 roughly. And that's a lifetime license. And there's my colleague Andrea Finnegan and I did one on capitals, natural capitals, and Fran's done 2 on net zero. But they're knowledge shares. But then actually, you didn't do any case studies on those, did you? The 2 hours that you did.
I think I kind of showed a couple of examples, and because it was the nature of that one was I couldn't get feedback from them. Because it's a recorded it had a live audience, but then it's a recorded session that you can look at on demand. But I do live ones where people can actually, I say, well, what would you do? And people will put in the chat what they would do, and you suddenly get, well, yeah, you know what to do then, don't you? You actually know what to do.
We could run some of these for you. Well, Fran could run some.
We would love that. Absolutely love that. And I want to acknowledge also, we've got about 5 minutes before the top of the hour. I could listen to each of your stories for days, I'm sure. And I want to make sure that we're packing in just like the juicy tidbits in these next 5 minutes to make sure that we're leaving our audience with the most important pieces. I want to acknowledge that there was a question in the chat a while ago when Peter was talking about B corporations. It was asked if B Corps are a worldwide accepted structure or if the rules are different. And Peter, you answered in the chat that B Corps are global. If someone wants more information about B corporations, it looks like, Fran, you posted the link to the B corporation certification page within the United States in the chat. So that resource is there as well. So we can make sure that people have that if they're wanting to look into B corporations a little bit more. So I guess with our just next handful of minutes, we've gotten.
Someone's not seeing the chat.
Oh, I wonder why. That's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting.
Alina's not seeing the chat.
It was Alina's question that I was referencing, so I don't know why the chat is going away. That's fascinating. Okay, so
Alina, if you Google,
I wonder, Fran, if perhaps I'm seeing the link were posted just to host and panelists, not to everyone. So it looks like some of Fran and Peter's posts have not been going to the entire chat. So I'm glad that got called out. Thank you, Alina.
I'm going to put it in now. Sorry, my mistake. I didn't click on everybody. So I've just put the B Corps link in for everybody. Great. And I'm just going to put our article link in as well to everybody.
I did repost that one already because, I was.
Yeah. Oh, you did. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Fantastic. So glad we've got those resources posted. And I guess with our last handful of minutes, I would love to just ask each of you briefly, if there was, 1 or 2 things that accounting professionals could do to really drive positive change, what is the best place to start? Like, what is the one thing that they can do that would make everything else easier or unnecessary? Where to start?
Can I answer that?
You can. I knew that you'd want to answer that.
I'm going to quote Fran, and you
Oh.
start by starting.
You start by starting, and the momentum will take care of itself. There
So
is a lot of
you do a course,
educational.
you do, you know, you pick up the My CPE program stuff.
ACCA have a course on sustainable accounting. That ICAW is an English-based one, but ACCA is global, isn't it, Pete? So look at your accounting body, and they should be providing some education. And
So
then
A4S, King Charles's Trust, has got so much information. A4S,
Okay.
accounting for
I'll
sustainability.
put that in there. Yeah.
King
accounting
Charles said
Thank
that King Charles, when he was Prince Charles 30 years ago, he said accountants are going to save the world.
Yes, we are working on it.
And he's got this whole trust called the A4S. They mainly focus on CFOs rather than accountancy practices, but the resources are phenomenal.
They are a wormhole.
Absolutely incredible. There's so much material. There's everything accountant in a FCO role would need to bring sustainability into the business, even a 90-day plan to bring the rest of the business along with him.
So we only have about a minute left, and this might be a bigger question than we can answer briefly, but I'm going to toss it out there anyway, even if it's just as food for thought. Because all of these fantastic resources about carbon accounting, accounting for sustainability, that's all for people who already have a curiosity and want to do something. What do we say to the accounting professionals who are just doing the same old within the old system?
Less carbon equals less cost, equals more customers, less taxes, lesser risk. You just go around the dial.
Okay. So just demonstrating how all of those things connected. The chat's blowing up. We've got some good stuff going on. Yeah. So
less carbon
fantastic.
equals less cost. It's got to.
Well,
right?
I think we're definitely going to need to continue this conversation with each of you, Fran and Peter, especially since you're reducing your carbon emissions. I recognize that, you know, you've made the powerful choice not to fly, at least overseas, anymore. And so getting you speaking at a conference here in the United States is not an option, but having you here on Zoom online.
We'll row across.
Right. Nice.
Yeah, but we're very happy to do a case study webinar and get people to understand what they can do.
We would love that. Thank you so much for spotlighting your firm today and telling us about all of the amazing work that you're doing in the world. And we'll definitely be in touch more, and getting together some webinars for accountants and really just working to raise the awareness around these important issues, because we definitely need more accounting professionals accounting for more than just personal profit. So thank you so much to each of you for this great conversation today. I've learned so much, and we will be in touch with questions as people continue to percolate on all of this brilliant information.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting us, Ingrid, and have a lovely day, everybody, or evening for us in the UK.
Thank you.
Hey,
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.